Hey there, I'm Shay Blackmon, and welcome back to Unlock, Empower, Transform. If you're new here, this is where we talk about real leadership, the kind that doesn't just survive challenges, but actually uses them as rocket fuel for transformation. And if you've been with me for a while, you know I don't do surface level advice. We go deep. Today, we're talking about something every leader will face, but most aren't prepared for: crisis. Not the dramatic movie style crisis. The real ones, the ones that show up on a Tuesday morning and threaten everything you've built. So let's get into it. Here's what nobody tells you about leadership until you're in the thick of it. Crisis isn't the exception. It's part of the job description. Budget cuts, key people leaving, projects failing spectacularly, market shifts that make your entire strategy obsolete overnight. And let's not even get started on the interpersonal crises, because those are often the hardest ones to navigate. The question isn't if you'll face a crisis, it's how you'll respond when you do. And here's where most leaders get it wrong. They treat crisis like a problem to fix and move on from. But high-value leaders, we see something different. We see potential. Because here's the truth. Every crisis is a crossroads. You can either let it break your organization or you can use it to build something stronger. I'm not talking about toxic positivity here. I'm talking about strategic resilience, the kind that's built into your culture so deeply that when crisis hits, your team doesn't just survive, they adapt, innovate, and come out better. In my book, High Value Leadership, I break down crisis management into 3 critical phases. And understanding these phases is what separates leaders who flounder from leaders who flourish. Phase 1, stabilize. This is your immediate response. When crisis hits, you need to stop the bleeding before you can start healing. There was a company a few years back that lost their entire senior leadership team within 3 months. 3 people, gone, and the organization was hemorrhaging talent and morale. The incoming leader didn't try to solve everything at once. She stabilized. She brought the team together, acknowledged the reality, and created temporary structures to keep critical operations running. No grand speeches, no false promises, just honest communication and decisive action. Stabilization isn't about having all the answers. It's about creating enough safety that people can function while you figure out the next steps. Phase 2, strategize. Once you've stopped the immediate crisis, you need to understand what happened and why. This is where the learning orientation from the SHIELD framework becomes essential. You're asking, what triggered this? What systems failed? What assumptions did we make that turned out to be wrong? And most importantly, what can this teach us about how to build differently? This isn't about blame, it's about insight. Because if you don't understand the root cause, you're just setting yourself up for the next crisis. Phase 3, transform. This is where most leaders stop too early. They stabilize, they strategize, and then they go back to business as usual. Bad move. Crisis reveals weaknesses in your culture, your systems, and your leadership. If you don't use that information to transform, you've wasted a valuable opportunity. Transformation means asking, how do we need to evolve? What structures need to change? What capabilities do we need to build? What behaviors do we need to reinforce or eliminate? The companies that come back stronger from crisis are the ones that use it as a catalyst for intentional evolution. Now let's talk about something that's even more powerful than managing crisis well: building a culture that's resilient enough to handle crisis without falling apart. Because here's the reality: if you're only thinking about crisis management when crisis hits, you're already behind. Resilient cultures have 3 characteristics. First, psychological safety. People need to feel safe enough to speak up when they see problems coming, not after the crisis hits, before. I've seen organizations where everyone knew disaster was coming, but nobody felt safe saying it out loud. That's not a culture problem. That's a leadership problem. If your team is afraid to tell you bad news, you've already lost the ability to respond effectively. Second, adaptive capacity. Resilient cultures don't just have plan A and plan B. They have the capability to create plan C, D, and E on the fly. That means you're not just training people on what to do, you're developing their judgment, their critical thinking, their ability to navigate ambiguity. Because in a real crisis, the playbook goes out the window. You need people who can think, adapt, and make good decisions under pressure. Third, distributed leadership. If resilience is concentrated in one or two people, your culture isn't resilient, it's fragile. You need to build leadership capacity throughout your organization. That means developing people at every level, giving them real responsibility, and trusting them to make decisions. When crisis hits, you can't be everywhere at once. But if you've built a culture where leadership is distributed, you don't have to be. And here's what connects all three of these characteristics: intentionality. None of this happens by accident. You have to build it, and that requires the kind of purposeful culture building I talk about in high-value leadership. All right, let's make this practical, because I don't just want you to understand this conceptually. I want you to be able to use it immediately. Here's your quick exercise. The Crisis Readiness Audit. Take out a piece of paper or open a note on your phone. I want you to answer 3 questions about your team or organization. Question 1. If a major crisis hit tomorrow, who are the 3 people you'd immediately turn to? Write their names down. Now ask yourself, are you over-relying on these people? What happens if one of them isn't available? Question 2. Think about the last time someone on your team brought you bad news or identified a problem early. How did you respond? Be honest. Did you thank them, get defensive, dismiss the concern? Your response in those moments determines whether people will speak up next time. Question 3. What's one recurring issue or near miss that your organization has experienced in the past year? This is your early warning system. These patterns tell you where your next crisis might come from. Take 5 minutes with these questions. That's it. But those 5 minutes will give you clarity on your organization's crisis readiness and where you need to focus your attention. And if you realize you need a more comprehensive framework for building your own resilience as a leader, especially if you're a Black woman navigating corporate challenges, I've got you covered. At Blackmon Consulting, we use a comprehensive crisis management framework that's built on 3 pillars: prepare, respond, evolve. Prepare means building the foundation before crisis hits. That's your resilient culture work, your succession planning, your scenario planning. Respond means having clear protocols for different types of crises, not rigid scripts, but flexible frameworks that guide decision-making under pressure. Evolve means building in the learning loops that ensure you get stronger with every challenge you face. This framework shows up in how we work with organizations on high-value leadership transformation. Because sustainable change isn't about avoiding challenges, it's about building the capacity to navigate them effectively. And that's exactly what we'll be diving deep into in the upcoming high-value leadership intensive course. We're not just talking about theory. We're building practical skills, real strategies, and the kind of leadership presence that transforms organizations. If you want to be part of that transformation, make sure you're following along because we'll be opening enrollment soon. Look, I'm not going to lie to you and say crisis is fun or easy. It's not. But what I can tell you from my own experience and from working with leaders across industries is this: the leaders who learn to see crisis as catalyst are the ones who build something extraordinary. They don't just bounce back, they bounce forward. And that's available to you. But it requires intentionality. It requires building resilience, not just in yourself, but in your culture. It requires the courage to transform instead of just recovering. If you want more strategies for building your personal resilience, especially if you're navigating the unique challenges that come with being a Black woman in corporate spaces, download the Shield Resilience Strategy Guide. It's completely free, and it's packed with practical tools you can use immediately. The link is in the description, and I'd love to hear how you're using it. Drop a comment and let me know what resonates with you or what challenges you're facing right now. Before you go, Here's what's coming up. On Tuesday, we're tackling the $550 billion problem, the hidden cost of toxic culture. And trust me, you don't want to miss this one. We're going to talk about the real financial impact of culture problems and why ignoring them is costing your organization more than you think. Until then, remember, your resilience is revolutionary, your leadership matters, and your transformation creates possibilities for everyone around you. I'm Shay Blackmon, and this is Unlock, Empower, Transform. Let's build something extraordinary together.